Now that we've got the chamber connected and setting up, we'll proceed to put together the motorboard section of the woofer chamber. And so what I'm doing here now is I've got the motorboard itself with the holes drilled, positioned for the T-nuts to mount the woofer. That's all ready to go, and I've got one of the side pieces here to connect on there in the top. And so I'm going to do this a little different than I've seen other people do this. Usually what happens is most guys who try to build one of these will connect both sides of this chamber or of this section first, and then mount it to the V-shaped, or the roof of the doghouse portion roof. My experience in doing this is that it's really difficult to get the two to line up if you put both sides on here, and then you risk having to bend the sides of the doghouse roof in too much. You could crack it and ruin that work. So what I've found is that if you connect one side of this first, then line it up, then connect the other side to the doghouse roof, it's a lot easier to do. And ultimately, if these things are nice and square, it'll go together really well. And also, once you put it in or you mount it to the bottom section and the chamber top, you're going to measure it out and it'll line up perfectly anyway. So what I've done here to help me along is I've used my trusty old workmate here to mount the motorboard vertically, and I've used these clamps which are just Bessie corner clamps I picked up at Home Depot, and they've basically got a couple of little clamps here, and they'll help. You just notch them in here, and they'll help keep everything perfectly square at a nice 45-degree angle, so we can mate these sides up together. You can see that here. And so what I've done is I've screwed this section down tightly to hold this piece in place. I lined them up first, obviously. Not ratcheted this down to hold it in place. The bottom one is just held very loosely, just tight enough to hold it up. I'll then glue in here, loosen these up slightly, and lower the whole assembly down, air nail the whole piece together, and we'll be good to go. Then what I'll probably do is just take my bar clamps and just clamp this whole assembly together, just to notch it up tight, just to make sure it's glued and clamped together real well. The painter's tape that you see on there is just very simply to prevent any of the run out from the glue to running down over the face of this thing. Even though you're never going to see this once the speaker's assembled, I still want to keep it as neat and clean as possible. I've done the same thing on the back side as well, although inside is even less important. We're going to push that glue back into the seam. So hopefully that gives you an indication. I'll just walk around here just so you can see again from the side exactly what I've done to hold that together. So here you can see the section just inside out, and I've joined the two pieces as I described previously. Got a few clamps on there and have it glued. Just let that set up for a while, and basically that will form 2/3 of the rear section of the woofer chamber. All right, so now that we have got the motorboards ready and ready to assemble to the doghouse roof, we also need to prepare the ramps that will form sort of the throat of the inside of the base horn. And that's these pieces here, which on the cut plan that I have, these are called, we've just referred to them as ramps, because that's kind of what they are. And so these pieces will go together as such. So with the 30-degree angle, like so, and they'll go mounted to the front of the motorboard, one on the upper end of it and one on the bottom, again, which basically forms the throat of the horn, which you'll see as I assemble it. But basically for right now, all we need to do is actually just join these together, glue them, and then you could probably just get away with glue alone, but I'm gonna run a couple of 1.25" finishing nails from my air nailer in there as well, just to hold it together and make sure that it never comes apart. Okay, so I've placed the 2 halves face down and put some basically tip to tip, and put some painter's tape across the seam to hold it together. And what I'll do then is flip it over, glue the inside of the V right here, the opening, fold it back upon itself, and drive a couple of finishing nails in each side to hold it together. And when you're done, you have a nice wing shape or ramp shape, whatever you want to call it, for each side, with a nice even seam. Just some excess on the inside, leave that in there, and a nice even thing on the bottom here, and those nail holes, I'll just fill those in before I'm finished. As you can see, I've got the roof of the doghouse portion of the speaker in the form here. It's been glued, nailed, and is clamped in there at the moment. It's been in there for some time, so it's likely already set up, but I'm going to leave it in there for the next step. So what you'll see is that a lot of people who've built this thing, a lot of their instructions would suggest to build the back section with the motorboard, that rectangle that would fit in right here, to build it first, then sort of squeeze this part together, fit it in, and glue it. I'm not comfortable with trying to do it that way. Matter of fact, on the first one, I started off to do it in that fashion, but I'm just not comfortable trying to squeeze it together. I just think there's too big of a risk of crack in the front, the pointy part in the front there, the peak of the doghouse, so to speak, if I did it that way. And so I've come up with a different method of doing it. And so you can see I've got one side of that back ready to go here, and I've just got it marked up here as to which side, so I don't make a mistake. I'm going to glue up this section here, clamp it in place on both sides in the right place, and nail it accordingly to hold it. Now, you got to be real careful with this, because it is easy to do this and potentially do it out of square. So I've measured, made some alignment marks here to line up with the end piece here, so that everything will line up appropriately. I've done that on both sides, and I've also got another this line here will line up with this edge from underneath. So I'm confident that I'll be able to get this completely square. In fact, I've done one already like this, so I know that it can work really well. And what I've then done over here is I've got this piece assembled with one side. And so what that'll allow me to do is put the back piece on, connect it with this piece once it's there, and it's much easier then to straight nail and glue into this piece to connect the two, rather than trying to squeeze this together, glue both sides, put it in. So it's a little easier method. Please yourself if you're doing this, which way you're more comfortable with, but this is the way that I've chosen to do it, and it's worked out pretty well for me so far. And here is the section after nailing, and so you can see exactly what I'm talking about here now. I've put on that piece, basically assembled it, one side of the doghouse roof. You can see here my marks and everything all lined up, so that we've got a nice contiguous edge going along there. Obviously the nails will all be filled in and so forth. And that'll take care of this part. And then we can assemble the back half once the glue is all dried. One thing that I didn't share with you earlier before I started to assemble these is that I've elected to use edge banding on the visible edges on this speaker project. I don't want to have the bare plywood edges, even though you can sand them, and the original Scalas were done that way. I've chosen to use edge banding for these. I think it makes a much neater job. And for that, basically, this is just a birch veneer edge banding, an iron-on. If you can see it on here. Basically, hot glue. There's hot glue already on the back of these things, so you just run over them with an iron, get it nice and hot, and let it melt and kind of work your way down. Roll it in with a veneer roller, and you get a great edge there, and just trim it up nicely. Sand it down so that there's no edges left, and that will stay on there forever. So we now have completed the construction of the woofer chambers, which looks like this. And these came out pretty well. And so what we've got to do next is we've got to add the splitters, we'll call them, not the splitter, I guess, the ramps. I've called them in my build plans. And they will go like so, at the top and bottom, aligned with the opening for the woofer. So how do we go about doing this? Very simple. So we're going to measure and mark these at center with the slot on the motorboard, and we're going to align this piece accordingly. And what you can see what I've done here is I've scribed the location in here just so we get it exactly right. And these will come precisely flush at either end. What I've also done is I've marked the approximate location of these from the inside. Just marked it out with a pencil so that when I air nail through the motorboard, I'll be sure to get my nails into the wood and not drive it out and miss. So now I'm going to glue this up, put it in place, nail it, and I'll try to clamp it as well so that it's glued on there perfectly well. And here's the chamber with the wings at the rear of the motorboard attached, and basically this is now a completed woofer chamber. I'm not going to lie, there were some challenges with getting these attached perfectly. Of course, once you attach the glue, the things start to move around a little bit, and trying to hold them precisely in the right spot to get nails through there is not easy. In retrospect, I think if I were to do this again, I would probably attach these before I actually mount it to the motorboard or mount it to the doghouse roof, because it's very difficult to get your nailer in here to put nails in and keep it square. So unfortunately, I had a couple little mishaps where the air nailer I missed, and it punched through the side. So nothing that wasn't correctable, but nonetheless it was still a headache, and with the glue on there, it didn't give me a whole lot of time to correct it and fix it. So so if you're tackling this project yourself, I would recommend possibly looking at trying to connect those things before you assemble the whole doghouse assembly. One thing to remember prior to assembly This area here, as you've assembled it, you take time obviously to get everything lined up, but it's unlikely it'll be completely perfect all the way around. So this is an area for you to to sand off, level all the way around. Don't just take a a very fine skim off of here. You don't want to make it uneven in any way, but this section here will butt up against the top of the chamber, and you're going to want that to be perfectly flush along here, so that when you glue it up, nail it together, everything will be nice and sealed tightly.